Welcome to This Explainer. I am absolutely thrilled to have you here today, because we're about to explore something that seriously feels like straight-up magic, but it is 100% grounded in cutting-edge physics. We're looking at some incredibly unusual quantum imaging techniques, and trust me, by the end of this, the way you think about light, cameras, and even vision itself, it's going to be completely transformed.
So, I want you to really think about this for a second. Can we actually photograph an object using light that never even touched it? Right? In our everyday classical world, the answer is a hard no. You point a camera at something, light bounces off it, enters the lens, and boom, you've got a picture. The whole premise of seeing an object without, looking at it sounds totally paradoxical, but what if I told you that down in the quantum realm, this isn't just a wild theory, it's actually happening? Okay, let's dive right in. Back in 2014, there was this massive breakthrough protocol out of Bristol University that proved we are definitely not talking about science fiction here. Their stated goal was to detect objects by measuring exclusively photons which do not interact with the object itself. I mean, wow, that became a documented scientific reality, proving we literally can image objects using light that has absolutely never crossed paths with the target.
Section 1. The Quantum Interference Engine. So to understand how this impossible camera actually works, we kind of need to demystify the magic first. And the whole thing really boils down to one foundational concept: quantum interference. At its core, this just means that quantum possibilities behave a lot like waves. Think about it like a really good pair of noise-canceling headphones. Those headphones listen to the ambient noise around you, and then they play an anti-noise wave that's perfectly out of phase. When those two sound waves meet, they just cancel each other out, leaving you in total silence. Well, quantum systems do something super similar, but instead of sound, they're dealing with the actual likelihood of different possible future histories.
Let's actually contrast classical waves with quantum amplitudes for a second. We're all familiar with classical waves. Like, picture water ripples on a pond. You can physically see them, their physical energy moving through space. But quantum probability amplitudes, that's a whole different ballgame. Picture these as invisible waves of pure possibility, sort of like colorful clay waves physically squishing together or flattening each other out. They aren't physical things like position or energy. They are these complex mathematical probabilities of where a particle might be or what state it might take.
Now, the absolutely crucial part is how these probability waves interact with each other. When the peaks of our quantum waves align, they amplify each other. That is constructive interference, basically building a high probability path to a correct image. But when a peak meets a trough, they flatten out. Destructive interference. It just cancels out the wrong paths. But, and this is a massive but, there's a catch. Measurement totally spoils the interference. If you try to peak, like if you set up a detector to see exactly which path a photon took, the whole wave pattern just vanishes. The system is forced to pick a classical path and poof, the quantum magic is gone.
And what we're looking at here brilliantly illustrates the complex, real-world counterpart to our little clay wave models. This is an actual experimental setup. It's basically this wild labyrinth of lasers, beam splitters, and filters in action. It literally looks like a chaotic puzzle. But it's actually a highly controlled, incredibly delicate laboratory environment designed to prep these perfectly pure photons so they can interfere with one another just right.
Moving on to Section 2, Ghost Imaging with Sunlight.
Okay, so what if we could strip away the need for all those massive, expensive laboratory lasers? Let's walk through how you'd assemble a completely passive system step by step. First up, you've got a sun tracking collector, kind of like a telescope mount, just gathering everyday natural sunlight. Second, a fiber optic transport routes that chaotic light indoors. Third, that raw sunlight is used for crystal pumping, hitting a special nonlinear PPKTP crystal. And finally, through a process called quasi-phase matching, it generates position-correlated photon pairs. It's incredible. We've literally replaced a high-tech laser with the sun itself.
I really want to emphasize this stunning number, 90.7%. That is the ghost imaging visibility researchers actually achieved using this raw, fluctuating sunlight. That is mind-blowing, because it's incredibly close to the 95.5% you'd expect from a perfect, high-end lab laser. By doing this, they correlated one set of photons hitting a bucket detector with another set hitting a camera, and successfully reconstructed a complex two-dimensional ghost face, an entirely passive quantum imaging source. Just amazing.
Section 3, Seeing with Undetected Light.
All right, let's shift gears to an even more mysterious technique, quantum holography. The secret sauce here is something called induced coherence without induced emission. Bear with me, it's like a spy movie. Imagine two non-linear crystals. We pump the first one to create a pair of entangled twins. Let's call them a signal photon and an idler photon. The idler gets sent out to pass through our target object, interrogating it, but its signal twin stays behind. We then carefully align the path of that first idler with the potential path of an idler from the second crystal. Because the universe can literally no longer tell which crystal generated the pair, quantum coherence is induced between the signal twins. So the signal twins interfere to form an image on a camera, while the idler that actually touched the object is never even detected.
Now, you might be wondering why go through all this crazy trouble. Well, it comes down to real-world applications. A lot of biological samples or specific gases are either completely transparent or get easily destroyed by visible light. So we really want to interrogate them using invisible mid-infrared or MIR light. The big problem? MIR detectors are notoriously inefficient and super noisy. But with this technique, our idler photon interrogates the delicate sample using that invisible MIR spectrum, while its entangled signal twin forms the actual image on a standard, highly efficient visible light camera. We are literally getting the best of both worlds here.
Section 4, Quantum Precision Microscopy.
Let's zoom all the way down to the microscopic scale now. What's absolutely fascinating here is how we measure incredibly tiny shifts in position, what we call transverse displacement. Normally, to resolve something that small, you'd need a camera with massive resolution and highly magnifying, incredibly expensive objective lenses. But here, by using two-photon interference and just resolving the difference in their transverse momenta, basically tracking their angle and momentum when they hit the far-field detectors, this quantum setup completely removes the need for highly magnifying objectives. It renders the detectors blind to the direct position of emission, which, weirdly enough, gives us ultimate spatial precision. By using quantum microscopy, we aren't just matching classical limits, we're surpassing them in profound ways. First, we beat the standard quantum limit, which is usually constrained by random shot noise. We push right up against the fundamental Heisenberg limit, often by using entangled N0 on states or squeezed vacuum states. But practically speaking, the biggest takeaway for us is this. Because we extract so much more information per photon, we require vastly fewer photons to actually get a clear image. This is an absolute game-changer for biology, because it stops delicate living cells from literally burning up or photobleaching under the intense lights of a traditional microscope.
To put that into perspective, check out this precise measurement, 1.4 microns. That is the staggering, mind-blowing super-resolution researchers achieved over a tiny field of view when imaging actual cancer cells. They used a technique called quantum microscopy by coincidence, or QMC, generating a ring of correlated green photon pairs. It gave them this impossible level of detail without frying the cellular sample at all.
Incredible.
And here's another massive milestone to call out, 35%. This represents the awesome quantum advantage in signal-to-noise ratio they achieved over classical limits in sub-shot noise Raman scattering microscopes. Basically, to put it simply, quantum correlations are giving us a 35% clearer image right out of the noise, and we don't even have to crank up the intensity of the light hitting the sample.
Section 5, The Future of Seeing.
Okay, we've covered a ton of ground today, right? From catching sunlight to observing delicate cancer cells. Let's compare our three main modalities side by side to really understand their unique engineering advantages. We've got ghost imaging, which can use raw sunlight for passive operation. No external power needed. Then, holography with undetected light, which brilliantly bypasses those terrible MIR detectors by using visible light cameras to see invisible wavelengths. And finally, quantum microscopy, achieving that Heisenberg limit resolution to protect biological samples. Each one has a completely unique advantage, but they're all born from the exact same fundamental quantum interference engine.
So, what does this all mean for you and me? Why does this abstract quantum physics actually matter? Well, look at these real-world applications. These are not just lab experiments anymore. Quantum imaging principles are being integrated into commercial gas leak detection, where cameras can spot methane leaks up to 200 meters away using single-photon LiDAR. In healthcare, quantum microscopy is allowing for the non-destructive cellular mapping of tumors. And since we know we can use sunlight to power these things, we're looking at a future of entirely passive, space-based remote sensing for environmental monitoring. It is a total paradigm shift. I want to leave you with this final provocative thought. Throughout all of human history, observation has required a direct line of sight, right? A physical interaction between light and the object. But today, as you've seen, quantum mechanics lets us bypass that entirely. We can image an object with light that never even touched it. We can map a fragile cell without burning it. So what happens to our entire understanding of the universe when our cameras no longer need to look in order to see?
Thank you so much for joining me on this journey through the impossible camera. Keep questioning, keep exploring, and I'll see you in the next explainer.